What is going on, YouTube? Andrew Miller from hook'emheadlines.com. Coming back at y'all today with another commit breakdown. Texas landed at least what I think could be the final piece in the 2023 class among high school recruits. Texas was able to flip four-star Red Oak defensive back Warren Roberson from TCU and able to get him to sign on the dotted line today. I guess technically today at the time we're filming on February 7th. He announced the decision during the Red Oak signing ceremony on the morning of February 7th. So this brings Texas up to 25 commits in the 2023 class, at least among the high school recruits. 29 if you include transfer portal guys as well. And barring something happening with five-star tight end Deuce Robinson here in the coming weeks, he announced today that his decision deadline will be by April 1st, which is near the end of this late signing period. Barring something happening there, Texas might be done, again, at least for high school recruiting in the 2023 class. Roberson was definitely one of the last remaining priorities for Texas. He was originally expected to announce last week, but inclement weather in the DFW area, namely due to an ice storm, pushed back the signing day ceremony at Red Oak High School quite a few days. Let's kind of get into the recruitment of Roberson and what you can expect for him at Texas, his long-term projection, strengths, areas of improvement, things like that I usually go over in these videos. So starting out with his recruitment, Texas kind of got involved pretty late here. He was one of the senior evals that Sark and his staff were able to get in on last fall, and I think it was a really good one. Roberson kind of saw his recruitment explode last fall. That included big pushes from schools like TCU, like Texas, like USC that were pretty much involved throughout the last 5 or 6 months. At different points, each program was pushing pretty hard in this recruitment. Ultimately, Roberson ended up committing to TCU, I believe it was on Halloween Day 2022, but he did not sign with TCU during the early signing period. I think he was the only high school recruit committed to TCU's 2023 class that held off. Kind of kept his options open. Last month, he took a visit to USC, an unofficial trip that started to generate some buzz around the Trojans. And then Texas ultimately got him on the books for an official visit on pre-signing day weekend, which was in mid-January. And Texas was able to get the final in-person visit for Roberson before he was able to arrive at his final decision. Usually getting that final in-person visit, especially if you're able to make a big impression like Texas was, that's a great sign for things to come. It's a pretty powerful move to be able to make in the recruiting scene. So, like I said, Texas was able to make a big enough move to get this recruitment locked down and to get their 25th commit in the 2023 class. Safeties coach Blake Gideon was able to spearhead this recruitment. Cornerbacks coach Terry Joseph was also involved. Gideon did a really nice job in the last couple of months keeping the constant communication open with Roberson, really convincing him that the 40 was the right place for him to be. I think ultimately a big factor in this recruitment too was proximity to home. I think that was probably the biggest roadblock that USC was facing here in the last few weeks as Roberson came to a final decision. So let's get into some of the strengths that he brings to the table. What his skill set ultimately looks like. There's a lot to like about Roberson's game. I don't necessarily think that he's extremely underrated, but I think that he's a pretty polished recruit, and he has a pretty dynamic skill set in terms of what he brings to the table in terms of versatility, coverage skills, speed. I believe he was a 2-sport athlete. I would have to check to confirm on that. I don't know if he was a 3-sport athlete during the winter, but I played football, ran track at Red Oak. Still could be running track at Red Oak, but he also at Red Oak played on multiple sides of the ball, was a contributor on special teams, played a receiver on offense, defensive back on defense, and put together quite an impressive highlight film while doing so. You know, I think he averaged somewhere in the ballpark 18, 20 yards per kick return during his junior season at Red Oak, around 16 yards per punt return during his junior season at Red Oak as well. He stopped playing a lot of downs at receiver during the 2022 season, primarily focused on defensive back. But prior to that, reeled in about 55 catches, a little over 1,000 receiving yards and a dozen touchdowns. So again, was a very potent threat at receiver when he was playing on offense. I think it was first 2 or 3 years that he played varsity at Red Oak. On defense, his junior and senior seasons were definitely his best. Those 2 seasons combined for more than 60 tackles, I believe 6 interceptions, well over a dozen pass breakups. He had over a dozen pass breakups just during his senior season. So definitely something of note there. Very productive guy. Again, really exploded on the national recruiting scene last fall. He's about 6 foot, 190 pounds. He's got a good frame that should translate to the collegiate level pretty much immediately. I don't think he really needs to add a ton of weight there. Like I mentioned before, very good straight line speed, burst. He's got pretty good hips. I'll mention this when I get into the areas of improvement for him. If you really delve deep into kind of some of the hip flexion and fluidity, I think there's some ways that can be worked on, but it's adequate to above average, I would say. And depending on which scouting report you look at or who you talk to, I think you'll get some differences of opinion there. Again, it depends on how he's utilized. But yeah, he's a guy that brings a good amount of scheme versatility to the table as a safety, or even in certain coverage packages as a cornerback. Definitely had the coverage skills to be able to hang in all those different spots. He's got excellent anticipation, excellent timing. The fact that he's played wide receiver, understands those route concepts, understands the timing there. And you combine that with his burst, his quickness, his just straight line speed. He's able to make plays on the ball in the blink of an eye. He's got really good hands too. So if he's able to, if he's really able to get a read on the ball, which happens fairly often, and he has a chance to make a play on it. Whereas a lot of defensive backs are going to bat that to the ground or just try to get it away from the receiver. He can actually catch it in soft hands, reliable there. He can make things happen once he's got the ball in his hands too. So he's always a threat to take it to the house or at least pick up some chunk yards on the return. I think more specifically at Texas, some of the strengths you're going to notice, and I'll talk about more of like the long-term fit for him here in a bit, but I think some of the strengths you'll notice that come to the forefront, are going to be that anticipation, that timing that I mentioned before in pass coverage, the ability to play the ball. But I think also the sure tackling nature of his game and, some of the aggressiveness when he's able to get downhill on the ball carrier, especially when he creeps up into run defense. He can bring some pad pop. I heard this mentioned that he is someone that doesn't lead with his shoulder a whole lot, that he has good tackle form. You can notice the tackle form just on his highlight film. There's a lot of safeties coming out of high school that are still going to be trying to make the big hit on every play. That can lead to some missed tackles, poor form tackles that can lead to injury as well. Roberson gets good rep on the ball carrier. He doesn't miss a ton of tackles. Takes a good approach, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's like a weak tackler, just a solid fundamental, but not putting some big hits. He's fast. He's got a pretty hefty frame. And you combine that with a good approach, and you can get some pretty devastating tackles in still. So in terms of his ability in run defense or chasing down ball carrier near the line of scrimmage in the open field or even to the boundary, he's very effective there. The chase down speed is definitely something of note. Other strengths that I would say he brings to the table, maybe some more minor things. I mentioned he contributed on special teams. I think that will once again be a thing at Texas if there's a way that he's able to contributed in his first couple years on campus. The most obvious way is going to be special teams, especially on some coverage units. Sark likes guys that are able to play on multiple sides of the ball, and Roberson is definitely a guy that checks that box. And then I would also say if there comes a situation where he's able to contribute in the return game, I don't necessarily think he's going to be a return man at Texas, but he's if needed, someone that could certainly fill that role. I think that's mostly it for the strengths, though. There's some things that I could dig in deeper to, but as always, I'll link my actual written up scouting report and deep dive in the description below. I did one over at the sites that about 1,500, 2,000 words, so a lot of stuff to dig into there. But yeah, let's go ahead and get on to the areas of improvement for Roberson. And this is going to be the shortest part of the video, which is obviously very good. But I would say the first thing for him, and I mentioned this in the article, but I think that there's limitations in terms of how you can use him in kind of in one-on-one pass coverage situations. I think ultimately the long-term fit for him will be at nickel, and again we'll get into this a little bit later, but I think in one-on-one pass coverage situations, the upside's not going to be extremely high. A lot of the film that I've seen from him at the high school level is in zone defense, and that's probably where he's going to be more comfortable right away. So I think kind of working on the main coverage skills there in one-on-one situations will be of great use for him. The other thing that I mentioned, and this kind of feeds off what I kind of the first point I made here, was I don't have a ton of film on him covering the deep ball. He has the tendency to bite on or to jump routes, especially in defending the intermediate passing game. And that could be an area where if he hasn't been tested a bunch at the high school level, that defending the deep ball, he might be able to get beats, or at least opposing wide receivers might be able to find some separation there. I think just the instincts and the discipline on the deep ball would be something of note. I don't exactly believe that this is a conclusive evaluation for him to say that I don't think he's weak on the deep ball necessarily, but I think it's an inconclusive part of it. So it's a questionable area for me, I think would be a good way to put that. So anyway, like I said, that was going to be a short part of the video to talk about his areas of improvement. I don't think there's a whole lot, is he a long-term developmental recruit? I don't think so. I think he's more of a guy that can contribute early in his career at Texas if needed, but ultimately could still use a little bit of time to develop those skills. But mainly he's just coming into a deep defensive backfield at Texas, and so I think that's why he ultimately won't see a ton of key live game reps right away. I think that serves as a good transition point, though, to talk about his impact his impact on Texas and kind of the long-term fit. I think there's two positions where he could fit in the near and the long term at Texas. The most obvious one is going to be at nickel. Again, he's a pretty good coverage guy. He's got good instincts back there. Good quickness, good hips, good understanding of route concepts, things like that, where, playing out of the slot or playing in different zone schemes, things like that, I think he could provide a lot of value. And, I think for a couple years it could do him well to learn under guys like Jahdae Barron, like Jalen Gilbo at the position. So I think that would be a pretty natural fit. He's also got, like I said, sure tackler, pretty good in run defense from the film I've seen, can cover ground pretty well, good chase down speed. So, in situations where he's coming up close to the line of scrimmage, coming into the box, that's going to be something that I think he will excel in. Especially when covering players east to west. Again, north to south, he's got enough chase down speed in that regard, but the chase down speed is also good going east to west, so he can still blow up plays behind the line of scrimmage as well, which was a big part of Barron's game last season that was a pretty big breakthrough. He was blowing up some plays in the backfield or around the line of scrimmage, getting a lot of stops in that regard. I think that the other fit for him could potentially be at field safety. I've seen it mentioned, I believe this was on TFB Texas, that he's kind of got a little bit more athletic upside, at least, than Jaron Thompson. I think there's a certain amount of truth to that, but Jaron Thompson is definitely a natural coverage safety, so he's got that ranginess, he's got that experience covering the deep ball, shadowing over the top, where I think for Roberson, it's going to take a little bit more time for those instincts to develop to really become the quarterback of that defense, kind of the staple of that defensive backfield, if you will. But I feel safety could still be a fit there as well. I think it just might take a couple of years at least for him to get to the point where he's ready to compete for starting reps at that position. That's why I ultimately think if there is a situation where he will be able to compete to get a spot on the 2 deep in his first, let's say, 2 years on campus, nickel would probably be the best fit because Barron's probably gone after the 2023 season. I mentioned it before, but the spot where he probably makes an immediate impact is on special teams. I would watch out for him, especially on like coverage units next year or next season. And so I ultimately think that, special teams contributor 2 to 3 years down the road, watch for him to start working his way up onto the 2 deep. Texas just has a deep defensive backfield, and bringing Roberson into the mix just shores that up. He joins a defensive back class that is really, really strong, along with Malik Muhammad and Derek Williams, 2 guys that I do expect to compete for spots on the 2 deep this coming season. But Texas has a loaded defensive backfield otherwise, even with returning guys, portal guys. Picked up Gavin Holmes and Jalen Catalon in the 2023 portal class. Guys like Terrence Brooks, like Ryan Watts, Jaron Thompson, as I mentioned before, Jahdae Barron, BJ Allen, Keaton Crawford. There's a lot of guys that have been on the 2 deep in the past, in the past year or so, that will be returning this coming season. That will make it tough to kind of limit the upward mobility for Roberson on the 2 deep. But anyway, that's pretty much it for kind of this analysis or evaluation of Roberson's fit at Texas. Texas adds a 25th high school recruit to the 2023 class. That's pretty much it.